When doing a hand cast, the first thing you've got to do is choose a pose. You probably already have some ideas about what you want to do, but we're going to take a couple of minutes here to go over some do's and don'ts. Hands are extremely expressive and can convey many emotional states. In general, a more relaxed hand is a more attractive hand, but to convey certain ideas, stress and tension may be what you're looking for. A fist is a very powerful symbol, but be aware that it can be very difficult to get the fist out through the wrist hole without damaging the mold. This is not a good pose for first-time life casters. One of the most popular poses, the American Sign Language I love you pose, can be a problem for life casting. Notice how the two middle fingers are bent more than 90 degrees and are pointing upward. Unless these fingertips are touching the palm, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to get the casting stone to flow up into those fingertips. Those two fingertips will end up as air pockets, and they will look like someone sliced off the fingers with a knife. The same goes for the Hawaiian mahalo gesture. The only way to make these poses work reliably is to make sure those middle fingers are actually touching the palm. The same goes for the pointing or "we're number one" gestures. The fingers that are pointing upward in the mold must touch the palm or the casting just won't come out right. The OK gesture works great, however, because the index finger is touching the thumb and the casting stone can flow easily from one to the other. No trapped air in this mold. As long as you keep these simple rules in mind, go ahead and have fun with your pose. I'd love to have a casting of Leonard Nimoy's Spock doing this gesture. This thumbs up symbol actually becomes a hitchhiker's gesture in your sculpture and has the same potential problems as the fist. You can hold objects in your hand when life casting. Candle cups, flower vases, kids can hold little cars, Catholics can hold rosaries, golfers can hold golf grips, and pitchers can hold baseballs. Any object that is non-porous is great. A piece of fabric would be bad because the alginate would stick to it. If you want the object to be removable, make sure you're holding it below the midline. Remember, the fingers in the sculpture won't bend to allow removal of the object. If you're doing two or more people, it's great to have them interact. Hold hands, intertwine fingers, have fun with it. Just make sure that any fingers that are bent more than 90 degrees are touching something else to eliminate problems with air voids. Spend some time practicing your chosen pose before mixing the alginate. Here's what you get in the hand casting kit. 1 bag of alginate, 1 bag of Liquistone casting cement, 1 casting bucket. This bucket has a cut down the side which has been taped up. This makes it easy to demold your casting during the procedure. It also has a water level marker, which we'll talk about later. 1 thermometer, 1 small bag of plasticine clay for reinforcing long fingernails, 1 small bag of Liquistone casting cement and a stir stick, and 1 copy of the 10-page printed instructions with lots of pictures. Before you start mixing, take off any large rings that might puncture the bag. If your model has fingernails longer than about 1/8 of an inch, you'll need to reinforce them so they don't break off of the stone model. Put some of the plasticine clay included with your kit under the nails. You should try to triple the thickness of the nail with the clay. Taper the clay so that it is thin and attractive at the edges. It should look like this when you're done. Using the thermometer, get your water temperature to between 70 and 75 degrees. The water level should be to the black line on the label. That's 3 quarts. Open the bag of alginate and roll down the sides of the bag. pour the water into the bag. Try not to spill any. Roll up the bag. Gather up the top of the bag and squeeze out the extra air. Grab the top of the bag tightly and start massaging the bag to mix. After a few seconds, you will notice more air in the bag. Squeeze this air out and re-grip the bag tightly. Continue massaging the bag against the table for about 2 minutes. A really good technique is to use the flat of the hand to rub the bag against the table, as I'm doing here. Make sure to mix all the way into the corners. After 2 minutes, turn the bag upside down and put the mouth of the bag into the bucket. Squeeze out as much alginate if you can. If you do this carefully, you should end up with the alginate level up to the original black line. Set the mixing bag aside. Dip the hand into the alginate and then take it out. Rub the fingernails, the fingers, between the fingers, and into the palm to get rid of air bubbles. Plunge the hand down into the alginate and assume your chosen pose. Push the hand down until you can touch the bottom, then come up about 1/2 inch. You need to have between 1/2 inch and 1 inch of space between the top of the alginate and the top of the bucket. If the alginate is too high, scoop some out. This space is for pouring the stone base. Make sure that the sides of the bucket. If it is, you'll be able to see it through the translucent plastic. As bubbles rise to the surface of the alginate, pop them with your finger. This will make the base easier to clean later on. Since alginate is a very dense fluid, the hand has a tendency to float. You'll be able to keep track of any float by watching the alginate line on the wrist. If that line starts rising, the hand is also. Wait about 40 seconds after the alginate is no longer sticky on the surface. Break the seal around the wrist and begin wiggling back and forth. You need to feel the air go all the way down to your fingertips before you can begin to pull out. Take your time with this. Going too fast can ruin your mold. If you've done the procedure correctly, there should be very little alginate on your hand. That means it's all in the mold where it belongs. With a very sharp knife, trim the extra alginate from around the wrist hole. This small amount of cleanup now will make our cleanup job much easier later. You'll get better results if you don't delay in pouring your casting. If you must wait 10 to 15 minutes, wet a paper towel and drape it over the top of the casting bucket to minimize evaporation. Also, cut away any alginate that is ridden up on the inside of the bucket. This will make the edge of the base cleaner. Pouring your casting. We're going to use the mix in a bag technique for the Liquistone gypsum cement as well. Measure out 21 ounces of tap water in a measuring cup. Open the bag of the Liquistone and roll down the sides of the bag like you did before. Pour the water into the bag. Squish out the extra air, grab the bag tightly, and mix just like you did for the alginate. Mix for about 1.5 minutes or until you can't feel any dry lumps in the mixture. Bouncing the bag up and down like this for about 15 seconds will bring most of the air bubbles to the surface of the stone. With a pair of scissors, cut off one bottom corner of the bag. Hold the bag carefully to avoid spilling the Liquistone. Hold the cut corner of the bag over the alginate mold and slowly pour in enough to fill the mold about 1/3 of the way. Set down the bag and tap, tap, tap the mold with your fist or with the palm of your hand for about 30 seconds. Fill the mold another 1/3 of the way and repeat the tapping. Fill the mold the rest of the way to the top of the plastic mold bucket. Tap the bucket for another 30 seconds or so to let air bubbles rise to the surface. Leave the poured mold alone for 1 hour for the Liquistone to set. The Liquistone will be set and ready to unmold in about an hour. Don't wait more than 3 hours to do this, or you could damage the casting. Unmolding. The casting bucket supplied with your kit has a cut down the side with a piece of tape over it. Now is when we use it. Turn the molding bucket upside down. Grab the end of the tape and pull downward to remove it. When the tape is removed, the cut in the bucket will allow you to slide the bucket up and off the alginate mold. Now comes the fun part, revealing your hand casting. A good way to start is to make a series of shallow cuts down the length of the alginate. Make these cuts no more than about 1/4 inch. You don't want to damage the casting by going too deep. Also, score the top of the alginate. This makes removing the alginate much easier as we go along. Starting along the bottom, cut into the alginate and pull pieces off around the base until you can begin to see the wrist. The important thing in removing the alginate is to avoid putting too much pressure on the stone cast as you go. The stone still hasn't reached its final strength, and fingers could break off. Anytime there are small fingers in the casting, be especially careful. Work your way around and up and down the alginate, removing one small piece at a time. As soon as you can begin to see the hands inside, you can begin to take off larger pieces. Being a little extra careful here can save a lot of time and work later fixing those broken fingers. Eventually, you will get to the point where you can remove large pieces easily. If you are doing more than one hand, and it is difficult to get the alginate out from between the two hands, get a piece of coat hanger wire and bend over a little hook on one end. Use this to fish out scraps of alginate. If you can't get it all, don't worry too much. Most of the time, no one will ever see those small pieces because they're deep between the hands. In a couple of days, those small pieces will dry out and shrink to about half their size. A lot of times you can shake them out or blow them out with compressed air. Cleaning up the casting. Some castings take longer to clean up than others. This one doesn't look too bad. Really good lighting will help you with this part of the procedure a lot. On this cast, there are some bubbles on the back of the hand where there were hairs. These can be popped off pretty easily. To clean up the bubbles on the base, hold the knife completely flat against the top of the base and with firm, steady pressure, pop off the bubbles. For small bubbles on the hand, like these, try using the knife, but a lot of the time these can be removed with your fingernails. Sometimes these bubbles are so small that you have to feel for them. For small bubbles in the anatomical lines of the knuckles and palm, the blade or point of the knife will work well to get them out. Around the cuticles and under the nails is another common place for small bubbles. Use the knife to round off the sharp edge of the base and make the contours more pleasing. This one is looking pretty good. Here's a close-up of the cut mark I made on the pinky. We're going to fill it with a little Liquistone, but first we've got to get the area really wet. Mix up a little bit of Liquistone and use the popsicle stick or your finger to apply it to the area. With your fingertips, carefully wipe away any extra Liquistone until it looks right. This patch will be dry and set in about 20 minutes. If you'd like to paint your casting, you must wait until the Liquistone is completely dry. In most areas, that means 2 to 4 days of air drying. Painting. Krylon, Rust-Oleum, and other companies make metallic spray paints that can make your sculpture look like bronze, copper, gold, silver, or brass. By using the spray can like an airbrush, you can apply more than one color to your cast, fading one color into another. Here I've used Rust-Oleum bronze for the hand, anodized bronze for the wrist area, and metallic black for the base. It sure doesn't look like plaster now. One warning, most gold spray paints go on very thick and can quickly cover all of the fine detail on your casting. Put it on in very thin layers to avoid ruining your cast. A company called Modern Masters makes some wonderful brush-on metallic paints. We especially like one called Flash Copper Sheer. It leaves a very nice pearlescent metallic finish. If you prefer, you could just coat your hand cast with a clear acrylic spray paint to protect it.